let's begin from here. We'll go back for a minute and look at what we looked at last time, and then see where it leads us. So, a quick review. We learned Tanu Rabbanan. This is in the Gemara Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Bet. Asur lechotz mikzat kufo kechol gufo. You can't wash even part of your body the same way you're not allowed to wash your whole body. But if you were dirty with, either dirty things or feces, then you can wash normally and not be concerned that you're over on Rechitza on Yom Kippur. Right? And then similarly for anointing, you're not allowed to anoint part of your body, like all of your body, but if you were sick or if you had scabs or something on your head, then you can put oil there normally and not be concerned. So what we said is, based on this braita, that the Isur of Rechitza is the Isur of Hana'ah, like Hana'at Guf or Ta'anug HaGuf. You're not allowed to do something to for what's the word I'm looking for?
Pleasure.
Yeah, very good.
We're all looking for that.
Right, because I was going to say benefit, but yeah, pleasure. Right, very good. You're not to, in other words, you're not allowed to wash or anoint yourself for pleasure. That's what we get from this braita. And you're not allowed to wash or anoint yourself even a small amount. So there's no limit in that regard. In other words, that from here we would say you can't wash at all. But then we had Tana Devei Menashe, which introduced a new idea. And Tana Devei Menashe, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said that a woman washes her one hand in water and then gives bread to a child, and she doesn't worry. So this introduced a different idea, that here apparently the woman is allowed to, not maybe just allowed to, but she must wash at least one hand, or maybe just one hand, before she would handle food to give to a child. So that's not for Ta'anug. It's apparently for a different reason. Apparently there's another factor. And this is only about washing. It's not about sicha, right? It's not about anointing. So, and then we bring the Maaseh of Shammai Zaken that didn't want to feed with one hand. So the other Chachamim, made a gzeira on him that he had to feed with two hands, right? To drive home how important this is, that one would wash their hands before feeding somebody else. So the Gemara said, my time. What's the reason? Amar Abaye mishum shivta. It's because of shivta. And okay, that's as far as we got. And so Rashi says, "Medichat yadav afishu ruach rash Torah lechem enukach biyadayim shelo nitalan shacharit," because there's an evil spirit that dwells on bread that is taken with hands that were not taken, that were not washed with netilat yadayim in the morning, and the name of that shade is shivta. So Rashi understands that the netilat yadayim that we're talking about, that the rechitza that we're talking about here is netilat yadayim in the morning. But I want us to be conscious of these two things. Until now, regarding Yom Kippur, we talk about rechitza. Rashi introduces this idea of netilat yadayim as being pertinent. Now, netilat yadayim, by definition, involves water, right? It involves pouring water on your hand, but it also involves taking that water in a cup. And it also involves there are other factors in terms of the kind of water you're allowed to use. But this is how Rashi understands. We looked at Tosfot. Just a second. Which is here. So in Tosfos, we were introduced to some other information. So let's review this quickly. Mishum shifta pirish Rashi ruach ra'asharal yadayim shalom etalan shachri. Rabbeinu tam mefarish de belona tinat pat letinok mutar litol yadav shacharit miyom kippurim. So Rabbeinu Tam says, actually, even if you're not feeding a child, you're allowed to do netilat yadayim in the morning of Yom Kippur, because your hands, when you wake up, are no worse. That is, it's not less than when your hands are dirty with tit and soa. And regarding tit and soa, the Gemara says, "V'chetz kedarko ve'eino choshesh." You don't have a situation that's like meluchlach betit and soa, more than if you didn't wash your hands doing the netilat yadayim in the morning, because you're not allowed to touch your mouth or your nose or your ears or your eyes, like it says in the Gemara in Shmona Shratzim, which we looked at briefly, and we're going to revisit it today. So Rabbeinu Tam is altogether starting from a different point. That is, when he's talking about our Gemara here, which says Isham Midicha Yada, he's saying, apparently, he's already leading up to an idea that apparently it's not talking about the woman doing the Netilat Yadayim, because she would have already done that shacharit. Rabbeinu Tam says mutar, that you're allowed to do Netilat Yadayim shacharit, but the implication is going to be that actually you have to do Netilat Yadayim shacharit because of this, what this Gemara says about Yad Lepeti Katzet, etc. So V'shifta dahacha inyan acher havai. So then, how does he explain the Gemara? So Rashi explains our Gemara of Medicha Isha is talking about just having her wash her hand, rechitza, having her wash her hand before she handles bread. And I'm sorry, I don't want to get confused. Lahefa. Rashi introduces the idea that this means that the woman would need to have done Netilat Yadayim, like she did in the morning, in order to handle the bread. And Rabbeinu Tam says, no, anyway, she's going to do Netilat Yadayim, even if she doesn't have a child to feed. So what's it talking about here? Shifta dahacha inyan acher havai. This whole inyan that by explains that she has to wash her one hand because of shifta. This is an altogether different matter. And what is the shifta that's talking about here? Sheshorea ha'ochel. That is dwelling on the food that she's going to be feeding. Kishabalitin pat latinok ben arba v'chamesh shanim This is a different thing, that here the shifta, this thing, this ruach ra'ah that's called shifta, is on the food. It's not on her hands, because her hands in any event will be clean. And today we're going to look a little bit about these halachot of washing hands in the morning. It's a bit of a digression, but also to try to put this more into focus. You're right. So even if she had washed her hands in the morning, she would still have to worry about this shifta in that's on the bread. And at the end, he says that which we're not worried, that we're not careful about this now, is because this shifta is something that isn't where we live. It's not in our countries. So what's the deal with washing your hands in the morning? So this is a very interesting sugya. We're going to look a little bit at the Tur and the Beit Yosef to get an idea of what's going on here. So if you've ever learned the Shulchan Aruch from the beginning, from the very beginning, you'll know it talks about things from the time you get up in the morning, and one of the things that you're supposed to do is go to the bathroom. So we're not going to go through all of this right now, although it's all very interesting. So of course, after you come out of the bathroom, you have to wash your hands. So this is where we're up to in the Tur when you get to Siman Daled. And the Tur says, V'yachatz b'nikayon kapav, v'yivarech baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. So you have to wash to make your hands clean, right? And you say a bracha for that. That's when you say netilat yadayim in the morning. וידקדק להראות עליהם 3 פעמים מפני שרוח רעה שורה על הידיים קודם נטילה, ואינה שרה עד שיראה עליהם 3 פעמים. So you have to pour water on your hands 3 times, because there is an evil spirit that's on your hands before netilas yadayim. It doesn't go away until you wash it 3 times. Okay, so here we have netilat yadayim, meaning that if we're going to be using a cup to wash, it's a very specific action, right? This isn't merely getting your hand wet. It's not merely rinsing your hands. You have to do this with a cup, and you have to do it 3 times. And the Tur says, so because of this, you have to be careful not to touch your hand before netilat yadayim to your mouth, to your nose, to your ears, or to your eyes, because ruach ra'ah shora aleihem, because there's a ruach ra'ah on them, meaning on your hands. You have to get the ruach ra'ah off of your hands. In the event that you don't have water, then there is another way, which is to rub your hands against anything that's going to clean them. But then you don't say netilat yadayim. You only say netilat yadayim when you're using water in a cup, and you can say on the kiyut yadayim. We're not going to go into this last thing so much, but let's look at the Beis Yosef here. Yachatz b'nikayon kapav, the Beis Yosef says, right, so you're supposed to wash your hands to make them clean. Even though washing in anything that will clean Nahani L'Tfilah is good enough for davening. Kamosha Katav B'Samuch, like he wrote nearby. Ein Kavanato Pal, Lomar Shechatz B'Chol Midei D'Menaki, D'Im Ken Lo Sheach HaMeimar V'Yivarech Al Netilat Yadayim. That is, here the Tur is clearly means this is not only about getting your hands clean, because he says that you have to. Wash with the Netilat Yadayim. Yivarech on Netilat Yadayim, and also you say a bracha for Netilat Yadayim. Shere'enu v'varech kein ela k'shurachetz yadav b'mayim. You only say Netilat Yadayim when you're washing your hands with water. V'gam lo shayach l'nemar v'lidakdek la'arot aleihem. Also, he wouldn't have said that you have to be careful to wash your hands 3 times unless you are using water. In other words, so it's clear that the Torah means you have to use water. This isn't just nikiyut yadayim. This is really about netilat yadayim. In other words, we understand from the last line of the Torah, where he says, if you don't have water, this is what you do. So we understand until now he's talking about washing with water. And why does he say, why does he use this terminology of Yerchatz bin Nikayam Kapav? So of course that's based on the pasuk Yerchatz bin Nikayam Kapai. It's a literary allusion, but the idea is that you have to have clean hands, but this is the way you get clean hands. Skip a little. Now, here the Beis Yosef will start to bring other sources, right? Yivarech on Netilat Yadayim, but Perek HaRoeh in Masechet Brachot, where it talks about the Seder Aboker, when you get up in the morning, Ki Mashe Yadei Lema Al Netilat Yadayim. When you wash your hands, you say, in the morning, you say, Al Netilat Yadayim. V'katav harosh al zeh, l'fi sheyadayim shel adam askaniyoteh, v'hi afshar shelo liga b'basar ha'metunaf b'layla, tiknu bracha kodem shikra kriyat shema v'yitpalel. So the Rosh here says something interesting. He says, what was the reason that Chachamim said you have to wash Netilat Yadayim in the morning? He says it's actually just a physical reason. That is, your hands are busy, and when you're sleeping, you're not going to be aware. You'll be touching your body in different places. Your body's not going to be so clean. And so when you wake up in the morning, you'll have dirty hands. The assumption is you'll have dirty hands. And that's why you're going to do Netilat Yadayim with the bracha in the morning. So according to this line of reasoning, it's not because of a ruach ra'ah that's on your hands. It's because Yadayim askaniyot, because you have busy hands, and your hands are going to be dirty even without you knowing it. K'tav Rabbeinu Yona, Muvarech al Netilat Yadayim ayin sham. The reason the bracha is Netilat Yadayim is because the kli that you use to wash your hands with is called an antal. In other words, he's saying it's a back formation from the word antal. There are different opinions about why we say Netilat Yadayim, but this is one of them. the kli, even though the kli itself was designed for taking nitila, for taking food, but nonetheless, we don't change the bracha. The bracha was, like I say, he's indicating was really a back formation because this is the kind of kli that you would use for getting water to pour on your hands. ידקדק להראות עליהם 3 פעמים, מפני שרוח רע שורה על הידיים ואינה שרה עד שיראה להם ג' פעמים. So that's the tour. ועל כן צריך למנוע מהגיעה בידו קודם נטילת לפה ולחותם וכולי. So he's quoting the tour that we just saw. And then the tour he's saying is basing himself on this Gemara from Masechet Shabbat that we saw last week, where it said Yad la'ayin tikatzetz, Yad la'chotem tikatzetz, Yad la'pen tikatzetz, Yad la'oz tikatzetz, Yad la'chasudah perush makom shemekiz dam. What's the chasudah? It's the place where you have a wound from bloodletting, and you probably all know that at the time, bloodletting was something that people did regularly, and Chachamim were makpid about it. There are a number of halachot that are connected to bloodletting. And without getting into them, we understand that after you've let blood, you'll have a scab or an open wound. And so you're not supposed to touch that wound if your hands have not been washed. Yad la'ama tikatzetz, right? So your hand to your ama, which here is a reference to your penis, you're not supposed to touch. Yad lapi tabat tikatzetz. Yad la'ama tikatzetz, yad lapi tabat tikatzetz, yad la'gigit also tikatzetz. What's a gigit? A gigit is a large kli. It's a large vessel, and here in this context, the reason you're not supposed to touch a gigit is because that's where you'll have shechar or maybe some other drink that you're storing in the gigit, and before your hands are clean, you shouldn't touch it. Yad misameh, yad mechareshet, yad ma'aleh polipus. The hand can make one blind, the hand can make one dumb, and it can also give you a polypus, which is some kind of a nose disease. So Rashi, so now he'll bring Rashi. We saw, I think, some of these last week, but let's look again. Piresh yad la'ayin shacharit kodem she'itol yadav. Tikatzetz noch lo shetikatzetz shruach ra'a shora hayad u'misamto v'chein kulan. So Rashi says that because there is a ruach ra'ah on your hands, if you touch your eyes, you will go blind. It can make you go blind. And similarly for all of them. So yad la'ayin misameh kodem v'tila yad la'ozen mechareshet. If you touch your hand to your ear, it can make you go deaf. Yad lepeh olachotem ma'aleh polipus. If you put your hand on your mouth or your hand on your nose, it can give you a polypus, which Rashi here explains. Reach hachotem va'apeh. It will give you a bad smell out of your nose or your mouth. It seems to me that not having your hand touch your penis is not really a matter of the morning, but rather because it will bring you to carry, right? It'll bring you to have an ejaculation, and that's problematic. Elsewhere, the Gemara, not here, the Gemara in the beginning of, I think it's the beginning of the second parak of Nida, it begins, Kol Hayad Hamarbeh Livdok Benashim, right? If women who check frequently to see if they have blood, that's praiseworthy. But a man who checks frequently his penis, because you could also say maybe a man should be checking his penis to see if he has a flow, right? If he has ziva. But in a man, then his hand should get cut off, right? Because there we say that we have another consideration, which is that you're not supposed to bring yourself to have an erection at all, because then you'll have carry, and the Gemara there goes on at length about why that's a very bad thing. So here also, when the Gemara says yad la'ama tikatzeitz, it's not really a matter regarding shacharit. It's ala mishum de mevilu de carry. V'chein yad la'pita bat. It's also the hand on your anus is also not really something that's particular to shacharit. Lavlin yanatilat shacharit nakat lehu feeling natal yadav lo yiga ba'ama v'lo yimashmesh tadir b'fiyat tabat. With piyat tabat, I skipped a line. With piyat tabat, if you are touching frequently the area around your anus, it can bring on hemorrhoids, tachtoniot. So now, Ad Kan Lashonot. So all of this until now has been Rashi that the Beis Yosef has been quoting. Tamos shel Rashi shekatav yad la'ama v'yad l'pita bat lav le'inyan netilat shacharit nakat lehu. The reason Rashi says that these things about touching your amar, touching the pita bat, are not about shacharit, to feeling natal yadav, because what he means is even if you did natilat yadayim, you still shouldn't be touching your amma, and you shouldn't be frequently touching or feeling around your anal area. In other words, when we talked about in the Gemara, when it says yad the ayin and yad the ozen, so Rashi told us that there's specific things that can happen, like there's specific damage or nezek that can happen if you touch your hands in these places before you wash. But about aman piyatabat, that we're not worried about specific damage. We're worried in general for each for the reasons that we said. And based on what I just explained, so it's also true that not touching the wound of your where you let blood, or not touching the jug or the vessel that holds your beer, those are also not restricted to not touching to only a case where you haven't washed your hands in the morning. The field natal yadav, even if you did natilat yadayim, you shouldn't be touching the wound where you let blood, because it's mazik lechabura. It's not good for the wound. In other words, you want the wound to heal up. Now, at this point, we could also add in. So yes, even though Chazal didn't know germ theory as such, but maybe they understood that there's a danger to touching an open wound on your body when your hands are dirty. And even if they framed it in other terms, that is maybe there are other things that are going on. In terms of the open wound, I don't think you even have to bring in the idea of the Ruach Ra'ah. I think it's evident, right, from even in the most rudimentary understanding of medicine, people will know, right, from based on experience, that an open wound is something that you want to heal. If you keep pushing at it, it's not going to close up. It's not going to heal. So that would seem to be self-evident. And I'm mentioning this because of what we touched on last week, and I'm trying to introduce some concepts along the way about what did Chazal know or not know, and what did they think this Ruach Ra'ah is. We already have laid out a couple of things. Let's just keep them in mind. That there's an idea that's introduced that there's a Ruach Ra'ah that comes upon you while you're asleep. But we also saw that according to the Rosh, you don't wash your hands in the morning because of Ruach Ra'ah per se. You wash your hands in the morning because Yadayim Askaniyot, because your hands are going to be dirty from touching things or touching different parts of your body in the middle of the night.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Tahara. There are two concepts. One of the concepts is that it is immanent, that you have the objects have something in themselves, something, I don't know, physical or something like this. And then you have to, they have some tumor, physical tumor in themselves, and you have to wash them or to do some procedure to get the tehur. And another one, that this is an immanent way to understand it. And then there is a spiritual way when you say that, no, there's nothing wrong with the object, but you have to do it because this is your concept, the concept of the society, of the religion, and so on. So to do this tahara. Now, what they do here, they do some kind of, I don't know, there's no word for this. They turn something which should be spiritual in something which is immanent. And that's very, very strange to me. Of course, even if there are germs, then you have to wash your hand because of the germs, as you do in hospital or all the time. They don't do it for religious reason. And here they mix this up.
Well, so let me ask you something. Why do you think that here they mixed it up? What did we say that indicates that to you? Because
that's the way I understand it. If you do netilat yadayim, you don't wash the hands. You do netilat yadayim. You do a religious procedure, which according to my understanding, is something spiritual, something which has got to do with the concept, yes? Other people would say it's because there is something in the object that you have to do it, but it doesn't have anything to do with something completely physical, like, I don't know, germs or ruach ra'ah, or that you touch something once. That shouldn't be the reason. If you touched, so please wash your hands because you touched. That's one thing. Another thing is to do letaher et hayadayim, לעשות נטילת ידיים.
Okay, so let's differentiate between a couple of things. So yes, so to begin with, I did want to make this distinction or show you that there's distinctions in the Rishonim about this issue of washing your hands in the morning. So we have from the Rosh, this idea that Yadayim Askaniyot, and that's why you wash. That seems to be something that's purely physical. But on the other hand, we have this idea that there's a Ruach Ra'ah on your hands. And because of the Ruach Ra'ah that's on your hands, you have to wash. And that's it. Now, we would differentiate, coming from a modern point of view, we're going to differentiate in our minds, certainly between a Ruach Ra'ah, which is something that can't be seen, and Yadayim Askaniyot. So even if I look at my hands that I don't necessarily see the dirt or whatever is making my hands unclean, but everybody knows that a normal person, let's say, sweats at night. So in the morning, if you have, the assumption is going to be any given part of your body might have had sweat on it, for example. And so in order to have clean hands, you wash. I also wanted, before I forget though, because you introduced the idea of tahara. So you should notice that so far we haven't mentioned the word tahara. And when we talk about netilat yadayim before we eat bread, then we are introducing there a concept of tahara, which we're not going to get into today. But there, that's a different thing. It's based on a gzeira d'Rabbanan that hands can become tamei. And so here we're not talking about Tuma and Tahara, but let me just explain that for a moment in case you're not familiar. Midioraita, only your whole body is Tameh. That is, if you're Tameh, every part of your body, every outward part of your body, every outward facing part of your body is Tameh. If you touch something Tameh with your hand, it's not that your hand is Tameh and everything else is Tahor. Everything is Tameh. But Chazal made a gzeira for Kohanim that they wanted the Kohanim to wash their hands before they handled Truma. And this is one of the reasons that we still wash before we eat bread is Mishum Srach Truma. We're doing it because of it's Truma adjacent. And we want to instill within all of us this idea that at a time, so that at a time when Truma is reinstated as a practical matter, people will already be ready. Everybody, even non-Kohanim, everybody will be ready to wash their hands. So there is a notion of washing your hands, doing Netilat Yadayim as a kind of tahara. By the same token, let's say if you needed to wash your hands before you ate bread and you were right next to a mikveh, you could also tovel your hands in the mikveh. That would also be good for Netilat Yadayim instead of Netilat Yadayim.
Sure.
Yeah.
When I do Netilat Yadayim, and when my hands are dirty, for some reason, they are really dirty, first I wash the hands, and afterwards I do Netilat Yadayim. I don't think that the Netilat Yadayim are going to clean my hands.
Yes, actually, yeah. So again, we could digress into that. First of all, yes, you should definitely do that. At a time when people were less hygienic for reasons that they didn't have water coming from their taps and
The tap, yeah.
and they didn't have necessarily easy access to soap all the time. This gets into one of the reasons why when people do Netilat Yadayim that maybe you do it twice, because the first one is actually to get rid of dirt, and then the second one is for the tahara aspect. But all of that's about Netilat Yadayim for bread, right? To wash before you eat bread. So here, when we're talking about Netilat Yadayim, we're using the same term of Netilat Yadayim because of what we just mentioned, that you're going to use a kli, and the name of the kli was Antal, according to the
we call natla.
What? What's that?
What we call today natla. Is
Yes.
it the same? Yeah.
Yeah.
With the two hands.
Yes, with the two arms, or the
Yeah.
2 ears.
2 ears, yes.
Yes, and the reason you have 2 ears on it also are reasons we're not going to get into, but that's also that has to do with the yanim of tuman tahara, right? Because when you wash, you want to wash in such a way that the water that's already gone over your hand doesn't go over your hand a second time, because once the water goes over it, it becomes mayim tmeim. It gets complicated. If you've ever learned the Sechet Yadayim or Hilchot Netilat Yadayim, you get into these things. In any event, let's go on though, because I want to get to something specific here. With the Beit Yosef brings up, it's not in the tour, but I am trying to keep these concepts straight. Let's also remember the thing that we're concerned about in terms of our sugya is this differentiation between what Rashi says and what Rabbeinu Tam says about why the woman washes her hand before she feeds her son on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says she has to do that mishum shifta, and we already now have this machloket between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam about what the shifta is. Is the shifta a ruach ra'ah that is on people's hands? And according to Rashi, so now we can make this connection. According to Rashi, shifta is a ruach ra'ah that you have on your hands when you get up from sleeping at night. And that's where Rashi says that a woman who had not done Netilat Yadayim in the morning will have shifta on her hands. So she would have to do Netilat Yadayim on at least one hand before she would handle bread to give to her son. Now, in terms of the halachot of Yom Kippurim, so like we said, there, the chidush would be, according to Rashi, so the chidush of the Gemara is, even though you're not washing even though this is not washing to get rid of dirt, it's not tit, it's not so'ah, but you would still have to wash mishum ruach ra'ah. And then Rabbeinu Tam says, no, everybody has to wash Netilat Yadayim in the morning because of this, what we're looking at now. Because we know from elsewhere in the Gemara that everybody has to wash in the morning. Otherwise, you're not allowed to touch these parts of your body for reasons that are have to do with bringing danger to yourself. You're endangering yourself if you don't wash. And the shifta is a kind of ruach ra'ah that's on the food. And by washing your hand, you're going to remove the threat of the shifta on the food. Now, shifta is also mentioned elsewhere in the Gemara, in Masechet Ta'anit. If we have time, we'll take a look there. And it seems to contradict, or it seems, let's say, to go better according to Rashi. But here, there is a reason I wanted to digress on this here in these halachot of the morning. Let's go on a little bit further. Where were we up to? Right? You don't touch the place where you have an open wound. Bigagit, because touching that with your hand is going to ruin the shechar that's inside of the kagid. Mishum hachilo misku gabe yad misameh, etc. L'chein Rabbeinu katav po ela shelo yigal apel chotem b'leinayim v'leznaim. So the Beis Yosef here is just explaining why didn't the Torah bring the whole list of things that you're not allowed to touch? Because not all of them are pertinent to when you're getting up in the morning. Some of those things you don't touch, like the Amma, the Tabat, the Pitabat, and the Kigit, you're never supposed to touch unless you do Netilat Yadayim. But these other things you're not allowed to touch because of a Ruach Ra'ah that's on you in the morning. Okay. Garcin tu hatam b'samuch. Tanya Rabbi Natan Omer, bat chorin hizu, umakpedet benetilat tolanot lo yafeh ad shishpoch mayim yafeh shosha pamim al yadav. This is a bat chorin. Bat chorin, right, literally means, right, a female free, something that's free. And it also refers to a type of ruach ra, some kind of shed. In this context, that's what the bat chorin is. He's saying this is a bat chorin, and it's makpedet benetilato, benetlo yafeh. It's makpid, that is, until you would wash properly, to pour water on it 3 times, it's going to be there. So this is where the 3 times gets introduced from this Gemara. You have to wash in order to get rid of this shade, essentially. Just a second, I'm going to skip down. Okay. Says Umashma midivrei harosh lo ba'in kliu netilat shacharit yehechud ba'in netilat yadayim suda. I understand from the Rosh, it's implied from the Rosh that you don't need a kli for netilat yadayim in the morning, the way you would need a kli for netilat yadayim for a meal. In other words, why do I say that? Because according to the Rosh, the reason you're washing in the morning is because your hands are dirty. And so it's not because of what Paul raised a moment ago. It's not because of tahara, or it's not because of some other ritual reason. There's a practical reason. The practical reason is your hands are dirty, and the kind of dirt, for lack of a better word, the kind of uncleanliness that your hands have encountered could be dangerous to different parts of your body, like your eyes, your nose, your mouth, etc. And so it would seem that in the morning, then you wouldn't have to have a kli netilat yadayim. You just have to wash your hands. This reminds me of a joke, but if we have time later, I'll tell you. If you know the joke about learning, teaching a goy about learning Gemara, I'll tell you. I'll try to leave a couple of minutes at the end because it's kind of funny. Anyway, the Ken Katav Haran Berish Perakol Habasam. The Ran also says so. Umashma dehu adin l'shar dvarim ha'akvim b'netilat yadayim b'suda shenam tzrichim b'netilat yadayim l'shacharit. That is, all of the particulars, the things that you have to be careful about that would hold back successfully doing netilat yadayim are not really applicable to doing netilat yadayim in the morning, right? They're only for netilat yadayim for suda. The netilazu eina ela mishum nekiyut be'alma. Because the reason for this netila in the morning is really just for cleanliness. אבל בתשובת הרשב"א כתוב, שנשאל למה תקנו ברכת הנטילה ידיים בשחרית. So the Rashba was asked, so remember the Rashba is before the Rosh. And he wrote, I don't know, I don't know how many, thousands of tshuvot. And many of them many of them are like this, where people were just asking him relatively straightforward questions about halacha. למה תקנו ברכת הנטילה ידיים בשחרית? והשיב, עברה כך נהגו בכל מקום לברך בשחרית הנטילה ידיים, מקפידים בכל תנאי נטילה כשעת סעודה. Says, essentially, it's true that this is what people are noheg, that they do netilat yadayim in the morning, and they fulfill all the conditions of netilah the same as if they were washing for a suda. I never found a clear reference that says you have to do netilat yadayim in the morning. If the reason you have to walk, if what you're worried about is the shifta or bat chorin, which are these some kind of shedim, it's enough to just wash. Now I'll stop here for a second, and we'll remind ourselves that this concurs, let's say, what we saw with what Rashi said now in Yoma, that Rashi is worried that there's shifta on the woman's hand, and he doesn't say she has to do netilat yadayim. But rather, I'm sorry, I keep coming back to Rashi. This concurs more with Rabbeinu Tam, because Rabbeinu Tam says she would have already done netilat yadayim. Here, the Gemara in Yoma only says she has to wash one hand. So to get rid of shifta, I understand all you need to do is run water over your hand. You don't have to do netilah. So this is also what the Rashba is saying. So he's saying, if you're saying that you're washing to get rid of shifta, the Gemara doesn't ever say this in a straightforward fashion that you do need netilat yadayim, but rather that you have to wash. If So look, he's saying if you're concerned about shifta or about chorin, it's enough just to wash your hands with water. If you need to wash before davening, you also don't need netilat yadayim. There, in fact, it's enough to either wash your hands, or if you don't have water, it's enough for you just to clean your hands with whatever you have. It could be anything that will clean your hand, which could also be dust on the ground or gravel, anything that will just take off that you can rub your hands against is enough. וגם בברכות, also in Masechet Brachot, Rav Chisda light the man de mahader amaya be'idan tzuta. Rav Chisda would curse the person who would go after water when it was time to daven. That is, it's more important to daven on time than it is to search out water. That's a sugya in Brachot. And we also have certain halachot about that, how far you have to go to get water. But in any event, we know that in principle, you do have to have clean hands before you daven, but you don't even have to have water to have clean hands. He says, but I do have some vague reference to this idea that you should wash Netilat Yadayim in the morning, because there's a Gemara in Masechet Chulin, in Perikol Basar, it says that a person does notel et yadav, right? So he does Netilat Yadayim in the morning, umatneh aleim kol hayom kulo. He can make a tanai for the whole day on his hands. Klomar matneh shetaleo ta netilah afilu b'suda. The ilu da'achila netilat ba'ina. That is, there's a concept from the Gemara, you could do Netilat Yadayim in the morning, and essentially have in mind that now you don't have to do Netilat Yadayim for the rest of the day when you want to eat bread. By the way, there are Tana'im to that, which we're not going to get into. It's not a good idea unless you're going to be eating frequently. But nonetheless, so the Rashba is saying, okay, maybe the idea of washing with a kli in the morning comes about because of this idea that maybe people would wash with Netilat Yadayim in the morning so that they wouldn't have to wash for bread during the rest of the day. Right, so that's basically what I just explained. Zohi Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemayim Shlema. Right, so we have a famous line in the Gemara that somebody who does Netilat Yadayim and then puts on Tefillin and then reads Kriyat Shema, this is a complete Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemayim. Midika Amar Notel Yadav, V'lo Kamar Rochetz Yadav, Kamo Shemar Be'erev Shabbat Rochetz Panav Yadav Ragav. Mashma the Chorasha Tzarich B'Boker Litol Yadav. In other words, so that little statement starts off by saying somebody who does Netilat Yadayim. So there does seem to be an assumption that before you daven, you do Netilat Yadayim. Okay. And it could have said Rochetz Yadav. V'im tishal ma'ishna Tfilat ha'shachar mitfilat ha'mincha v'aravit. So what would be the difference that you would have to do Netilat Yadayim before Shachris, but not before Mincha and Mariv? Because in the morning, and this is an important point, we're like a new creation. Dichtiv Chadashim Mabkarim Rabba Emunatecha, right from Tehillim. Tzrichim Anu Lehodot Lo Yitbarach Al Shebera'anu Lichvodo Ulesharto Ulevarech Bishmo. V'adavar Zeh Tiknu B'Shachar Kol Otam Habrachot Shanu Mavarchim B'Chol Boker Boker. Right? We do what we call Birkot HaShachar, based on this concept that every morning when we wake up, it's as if we have been recreated, as if we've been created anew. And we have all these other brachot. L'fikach anu tzrichim nitkadesh b'kedushato, v'litol yadeinu min hakli kekohen shemekadesh yadav min hakiyor godem avodato. So we need to sanctify ourselves. And so we are like the Kohen who's in the Beit HaMikdash, and as we saw in Masechet Tamid, and also Masechet Yoma, you were not allowed to do any avodah until you washed your hands and legs from the kiyor. So we don't have a kiyor, and we don't wash our hands and legs, but what do we have? We have this ritual, like Paul said, we have a ritual, and that's Netilat Yadayim. So that's from the tshuva of the Rashba. Rav David Abu Darham shekatav etzrich shiur mayim ba'im mikol chadam. The Abu Darham is a late Rishon who wrote a halachic book called, which we simply call the Abu Darham. And he says that when you do Netilat Yadayim in the morning, it has to become, you have to wash with your hands mikol chadam. That is, you have to pour the water on your hands. That it, as opposed to just sticking your hands into a tub of water, or having the water, let's say, just flow out of a tap onto your hands. You would have to. So, and that's the idea of it. That's the basic idea of Netilat Yadayim. That when you're washing, it's mikoach adam. It's from your own koach. Okay, and now this is where it gets also very interesting. Ken katuv b'sefer Zohar b'parshat Vayeshev al pasuk vayamar ish nasu mizeh. ועוד כתובים שם בנטילת ידיים, שאחרית חידושין שאינם נמצאים בפוסקים. So here, this is one of the reasons I wanted to show you this, is because the Beis Yosef here introduces the Zohar into this discussion. And this is quite interesting, right? Because what he's doing, and what we'll see what he's doing, he wants to understand, he's trying to understand this basic question: why exactly is the, whether it's a minhag or whether it's a halacha kvuah, but why do we do netilat yadayim in the morning? Granted, we should wash our hands in the morning, but why should we do netilat yadayim in the morning? So we have this answer from the Rashba. The Rashba says it's because we've been recreated, and we have to make ourselves kadoshim, and the way we'll do that is by doing this ritual netilat yadayim. But now he's going to introduce something from the Zohar, and he says, "I saw things in the Zohar chidushim she'enam nimtzeim b'poskim." It introduces chidushim that I didn't see in the poskim. V'zeh l'shono. Rabbi Shimon patach. So Rabbi Shimon opened. In other words, he started off a drasha. This is from the Zohar. Echatz b'nikayon kapai. Right. So that's this pasuk from Tehillim. I'm going to wash with the cleanliness of my hands. Tachazi raza demilta. So come and see the secret of this thing. Demilta hachidelet bar nash ba'alma delot te'in ta'ama demuta belelia. You don't have any person in the world that did not taste the taste of death at night. V'ruach misa'ava sharia al-hahu gufa. And a dirty spirit dwells on that person, on that body. My time begin to nishmata kadisha istalakt mine devarnash unafakat mine ve'al de nishmata kadisha nafakt istalakt mine sharia rucha misava al hahu gufa. I'm not going to be able to translate this very well, but there's the idea is begin to nishmata kadisha with the holy breath. Begin to nishmata kadisha. Sorry, because the holy neshama, right? Because the holy soul went up from him, left him. Devarnash nafakt minei. Because when you slept, your neshama left you. Because your soul left you, your holy soul left you when you were sleeping. So that's when the Ruach Ra'ah came upon you. And it kind of left a vacuum of your when your soul leaves, it leaves a kind of a vacuum in your body, which is inhabited then by a ruach ra'ah. Bekad ahadrat nishmata legufa, and when your neshama returns to the body, itabarta ahu zuhama, then that dirtiness has left. V'ha'itmar diyadoi debarnash zuhama demisa'avu ishta'ar bahu. But some of that, there'll be still some residual of this ruach ra'ah that's still going to be on a person's hands. Yalda lo yavor barnash yadoy, I know it, and because of this, a person shouldn't put his hands on his eyes. Begin hahu rucha de misava adin atil lahon, until he does natilat yadayim, he's going to have this ruach ra'ah on his hands. The kad natil lahon kaden ha'it kadish, when he does natilat yadayim, then he's being mekadesh his hands. The akri kadosh, he's called kadosh. The hech bai liitkadasha, how does he need to do this kedusha? By chad kli letata v'chad kli la'ela. He needs one kli below and one kli above. The itkadash mehahi le'ela, so that he'll be mitkadesh from the one that's above. Vahihi delatata diahiv bazuham et misavube deachli the kabbalah misavo. The bottom one is going to receive the evil and the dirty spirit. So he's going to have a kli above that's going to have water, and a kli below that's going to capture the water. So the one that he's going to be doing to be mikadesh from, that's the kli of Netilat Yadayim, that's blessed. V'da arur, and the other one will be cursed. V'lo ba'in inun ma'in dezuham and the oshta bebeta. One doesn't need to, literally doesn't want to, one wouldn't want to pour out this polluted water in their house. A person should not come near it. Because this other side, this side will come into it. And it can harm you. In other words, once you've washed your hands and you have the water in the bottom kli, you don't pour them out in your home. Now, of course, back then they didn't have indoor plumbing, so it meant that you had to take the water outside. And this is why, when people do this idea of doing negelvasser, where you have a kli next to your bed, so that you don't go even dalet amot until you've washed your hands. So then you take that. It's based on this. It's based on what we're learning now. Let me continue. Yes.
Isn't it depressing to think that when people are going to read what is written today, they will have a strange impression about what people thought nowadays?
Well, that's an interesting discussion, which maybe I'll finish this and I'll talk a little bit about it. My name is Sabin. The Kabbalah Nizakim Inun Main Misavim, right? Because you can get nezek, you can get harm from these dirty or these polluted waters. Until the zuhama, until this, this infection, as it were, this dirt that's on your hands, until you've washed, you don't make a bracha. Now, this is the first time we see the word tameh. A person who has not yet washed his hands in the morning is called tameh. But once he's nitkadesh, that is, once he's washed his hands in this way, then he's called tahor. B'kadmita dichtiv v'hizaha tahor al tameh. So therefore, you can only wash right from a hand that's clean to begin with. Lo yito el min yada di'itki b'kadmita. You don't do netilat yadayim except with the hand that has been washed first. because we see in the pasuk v'izah hatahor al tamei, right, regarding para aduma, that the tahor is sprinkles the water on the tamei, and now the Zohar is saying we learn from that in order to purify your hands, you have to have a clean hand to pour water from. Da ikri tahor v'da ikri tamei. Begin kach. Chad kli letata v'chad kli le'ela. So that's why you have these two kelim. Da kadisha v'da misava. One is kadosh. One is misuav. It's tamei. Me'inun mayin asur me'abad behun mide ele bay le'ushtelun ba'atra. You're not allowed to do anything with this water. You have to lu'ushta. You have to throw them out. To a place where people don't pass by. Well, you shouldn't throw them out in your house. Because there'll still be a ruach ra'ah on the water, and you don't want them in your house. Right? But if you have a downward slope to pour them on to get them out of the house, that's okay. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to purify Israel. Okay, so that's what the Zohar says. The Katav Od, and it also says the two debayile lebarnash natla yada yamina b'smola begin the shouting yamina al smola. It also says that a person has to wash with their right hand on their left hands in order that the right should reign over, right? Should be more powerful than the left hand. The listache yamina b'smola, and then you should wash your right hand with your left hand. Begin kach ihu natila. This is how you do natila. Adam denatil yadoi yitol yamina b'smola v'ashlata yamina al smola. Begin to yahiv duchtel yetzer hara l'shalta. So on this, a person should wash the natil yadoi yitol yamina. He should take it with his right hand to his left hand in order that the right hand should be more powerful, right? Reign over, right, the left hand. So that you don't give any place to the Yetzer Hara to the Shalta, right, to rule. So this is what's interesting. In the Zohar, it says, "Maya inu miyamina v'ihu mismola v'inu chadva miyad yahiv l'smola v'it debaku be inu maya v'chadan le'ubata itachlil ihu b'yamina v'ita'ay l'nukva b'hahu chadva v'simanech mandanatal maya b'yidei yamina b'mana kadma la'akar maya Ismola ihu v'lo mismola yamina. You know what? I'm not even going to read all this now because we're running out of time. Basically, what he's going to say here is there's another passage. What the Beis Yosef here is trying to work out is a couple of things. Why do we need Netilat Yadayim per se in the morning? So he's given some reasons, and now he went through the sources that he knew from the Gemara and from the poskim, from the Rishonim that preceded him. But he's saying, I also am looking in the Zohar, because the Zohar introduces certain things that were not mentioned in the Gemara. And so now we have this idea that is introducing Kabbalistic concepts, but it's also telling me certain practical things that I need to do and be careful about when I'm washing. So I do need to wash with a kli. The reason I'm washing is because when I slept at night, my neshama left me, right? And that's what we say in the morning. At night we say we want Hashem to guard our neshama, and in the morning we thank Hashem for returning our neshama. So he says, when your neshama left you, the Zohar says, a ruach ra'ah took its place, and in the morning, God has returned your soul, and as it were, this is my words, but as it were, it pushed out the ruach ra'ah, except there's some residual ruach ra'ah still on your hands. And because of that, you have to wash, but you are in a state of tumah, and in order to get rid of this ruach ra'ah, you need a ta'alich ta'ara, right? You need some kind of ta'ara process. And that process is going to involve taking a kos from the tilat yadayim and then pouring it on your hands. What he's going to get now, the reason he's quoting this other part of the Zohar, we could break this down a little bit more carefully, but I'm going to jump the gun and I'm going to tell you he's trying to figure out exactly how you do this netilat yadayim. Because the Zohar says you have to pour water. You're supposed to, on one hand, it says you're supposed to pour water from your right hand, but on the other hand, me'idach gisa, right? The hand that pours the water has to already be tahor. So how are we going to do this, right? Because when you wake up, both of your hands are not tahor. So I'm going to skip the language of the Zohar, and I'm going to just show you what the Beis Yosef says. It says, Shnei ma'amarim elu nirim kesotrim zeh et zeh. So these two passages in the Zohar seem to contradict each other, right? The second passage starts to talk about how you have to have the right hand pouring on the left hand, and there's a certain order to this. Could be that there's a difference between the Netilas Yadayim for the morning and Netilas Yadayim for eating. The Netilat Yadayim d'Shachrit kevan shehem tmeot me'sitra v'sa'ava d'sharya, because in the morning, because your hands are tameh from this evil spirit that is dwelling on them. If you do the netilah first with your left hand, kadmita smola b'yamina, with your left hand on your right hand, nira ki'ilu sitra d'yamina mishamesh l'sitra achra. It would look like the side, sitra just means side, right? And I'm not well versed in Kabbalah, but I'm sure you've heard this idea of the sitra achra. The sitra achra, right? It's the other side. So it's like the dark side. So if you pour with your left hand on your right hand, it will look like your right hand, which is the sitra d'yamina, is subservient to the left hand, which is the sitra achra. That's why you first have to wash with your right to your left, like it says in the Zohar, Parshat Vayeshev. When you're washing to eat, the assumption is that your hands are tahor, but we're washing for an extra kedusha. Yad small. There I say you should wash your left hand first from the right hand. The Yeshiv Reshulam Tchila Notel Yad Yamin Miyad Small. You could also say that one always washes Notel Yad Yamin, that you wash your right hand from your left hand, whether for Netilat Yadayim in the morning or whether for eating, like it says in Parshat Vayeshev, Mashakatuv Parshat Truma Man דנטיל מים בידי, היינו למשל נוטל כלי של מים ביד ימינו, ונותנו ליד שמאלו, כדי שיריג מים על יד ימינו. Right, so if you learn that this is the way it gets brought down in later poskim, how do you wash in the morning? You wash by holding the cup in your right hand to fill the cup, but then you transfer it to your left hand and start pouring with your left hand on your right hand. And in short, the Beis Yosef comes up with that idea in order to reconcile two contradictory passages in the Zohar. So let me just say, this was a digression that I wanted to do, and that's why I spent a lot of time on it, just because I think it's interesting. But one of the reasons it's interesting is because you see the Beis Yosef, who of course was also a mikubal. He is at one time a great halachist, and at the same time, a great kabbalist.
Shale.
Let me hold your question for a second. Let me just, because I'm in the middle actually of a sentence. So here, Yosef Karo, the halachist, he wants to know the halacha. So he wants to know, A, why do we wash Netilat Yadayim in the morning? Why dafka Netilat Yadayim and not just wash our hands? And B, how exactly do I do this Netilat Yadayim? So nobody says exactly how to do the Netilat Yadayim in the Gemara and not in Rishonim. So then he turns to the Zohar. So this gives you an indication of his derech in learning halacha, that the Zohar can also be used as a halachic text, but apparently only after you've exhausted the non-Kabbalistic text. After you've gone through the Gemara, if he would have found something in Yerushalmi, he would have used the Yerushalmi. If he would have found anything, in other words, in Chazal, he would have taken from Chazal or from Rishonim. But barring that, and we could also add in at this point, assuming that nothing in the Zohar contradicts what we see in the Gemara, I can use the Zohar as a legitimate halachic source. And based on this, I'm going to learn the specific order that I should wash my hands in the morning. That's what I wanted to say. Paul, what did you want to say?
Just he is not politically correct because he doesn't mention the itel. And in the Gemara, I don't, Chazal, they took into consideration the itel for instance, with the tefillin and so on.
Yeah, so but bear in mind that Yamin, so this gets into a different discussion. Yamin, we assume means, right, and small means left, but Yamin in Chazal, we've touched on this elsewhere, Yamin can also just mean the stronger hand. So now this is, but what you raise is a good question. So now that I've said that there's a specific order to doing the Netilat Yadayim in the morning, so, or even without that, I understand now from the Zohar that the Yamin means something and the small means something. The Yamin is the Sitra and the small is the Sitra Achra. So is that a universal, or is that specific to right hand? In other words, am I going to say the right hand of right-handed people, the left hand of left-handed people is their right hand? Does it apply like that? I'm not an expert in this. It seems to me that in this particular case, the Yamin is probably a universal. The other place where we saw Yamin as a universal is, we were learning Masechet Tamid, and we said that the Kohen, when he comes up to, and he has to go around the Mizbeach, he turns first to the right, right? Kol Piniyotecha Yu Yamin. there's a certain universality to yamin. But on the other hand, let's say a left-handed person who puts on tefillin, there's a drasha that we learn out that you put the tefillin shayad al yad kaha, on your weaker hand. So his weaker hand is his right hand. Anyway, it's an interesting question, but we'll leave it for now. I wanted to show you this. I wanted to show you the introduction of how the Beis Yosef introduces the Zohar, which he does rarely, but he does on occasion introduce the Zohar as a halachic source. That's what I have to say about that. I think next week I'm going to try to fill this out a little bit more, but then I want to go back to the Gemara and Yoma and continue on there. So I think that's it for now. And any last questions or comments? Okay. Everybody have a good night's sleep. And
Right, thank you.
So some of us started already.
you had it start.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
No. By the way, I didn't say that because of you. I did see that you fell asleep. I said that also because of me. I told Michael Schwartz, I've fallen into a kind of schedule where I'm working until about 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I sleep for about 3 or 4 hours, but then I wake up whether I want to or not, which is good because then I daven, and then I go back to sleep again. So it's a little crazy even for me, but I want everybody to have a good night's sleep. It's really, really, really important for our health. And and now that we know from the Zohar that our souls leave us at night, we want them also to have a good sleep, like wherever they are.
They can use a vacation.
They can use a little vacation from us. I think that's right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Shabbos. Bye-bye.